Another Republican member of Congress just abruptly resigned. Troy Nehls, one of the most loyal MAGA foot soldiers, suddenly announced he's stepping away, becoming the sixth MAGA Republican to jump ship in a matter of weeks. But don't mistake this for a simple, personal decision, because behind this wave of exits, there's a story almost no major outlet is talking about. Why are the most hardcore MAGA loyalists bailing out now? Why leave right before the midterms, the exact moment when even a tiny shift could flip control of the House? And more importantly, what are they trying to avoid? However, we are expecting other resignations. A wave of resignations we've been talking about and have heard are coming. The question is, will some of these additional resignations take place before the midterms, thus switching the speakership from MAGA Mike Johnson to Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries? At the same time, on the state-level track, the newest departure comes from Texas. Troy Nehls, a committed MAGA figure from Richmond, announced he will not seek re-election. On the surface, it sounds like a family decision, but when you look closer, a pattern appears. Nehls built his identity around Trump symbolism, never surrender shirts, oversized American flag bow ties, a style meant to broadcast loyalty. And yet, even he is stepping aside. That tells us something about the calculations now taking place inside the movement. In his statement, Nehls wrote that after more than 30 years in law enforcement, as police officer, constable, Fort Bend County Sheriff, Army veteran, and 6 years in Congress, he chose to return home after speaking with his wife and daughters over Thanksgiving. That is his framing. But another layer becomes visible when placed in context. Many Trump-aligned members are anticipating that they will soon be in the minority. They see the possibility of a political shift, and they know public accountability is on the horizon. There is also a documented chapter from his Texas past that gives additional texture. According to Richmond Police Department records, Nehls was terminated on January 28, 1998. The termination letter cited 19 policy violations, including destruction of evidence after instructions to log it properly, improper arrest, disobeying orders, making false statements, charging personal items to the department, and failing to perform required duties. He appealed, calling the decision arbitrary, but the termination was upheld. These are facts, not allegations, and they remind us that some of the loudest voices in Washington come with long histories the public rarely hears about. While this unfolds in Texas, reporting out of Washington adds another layer. Punchbowl News, widely respected for its congressional sourcing, reported that multiple Republican members are considering retiring in the middle of their term. That echoes earlier reporting by the Midas Touch Network, but Punchbowl's confirmation underscores the seriousness. One senior House Republican told them, in clear frustration, "This entire White House team has treated all members like garbage, and Mike Johnson has let it happen because he wanted it to happen." That is an opinion, but it reflects real internal fracture. And in the federal courts, another institutional stress point emerged. On November 24th and 25th, Judge Curry ruled that a federal prosecutor had been unlawfully appointed, leading to the dismissal of indictments against James Comey and Letitia James. That ruling, according to court records, hinged on improper appointment authority. It is a reminder that procedural foundations, not just political rhetoric, are under renewed scrutiny. Here is where the two storylines meet. In Washington, resignations hint at instability within a once unified bloc. In Texas, the departure of a MAGA loyalist with a complicated record reflects deeper vulnerabilities. And in the judiciary, questions of legitimacy and process are rising at the same moment. These are not isolated events. They are pieces of a larger pattern that older Americans have seen before, when strains inside systems begin to surface all at once. Across Washington, the same sentiment keeps resurfacing, quietly in some corners, bluntly in others. Appropriators, authorizers, defense hawks, fiscal doves, senior members, and rank-and-file representatives are repeating one shared observation: morale is collapsing. And here is the part most Americans never see. Members from both wings of the Republican conference say the White House team's approach has become openly dismissive, even hostile. Small, routine congressional gestures, announcing minor grants, receiving basic agency responses, have been blocked or ignored. To many lawmakers, it feels less like governing and more like being strong-armed. But when you look closer, another layer emerges. Members privately acknowledge they expect to fall into the minority after the midterms. That expectation is now shaping their tone, their calculations, and their anger. Senior Republican sources inside the House describe a chamber on the brink. More early resignations coming, a leadership structure stretched thin, and a speaker, Mike Johnson, who they believe will lose his gavel before his term is up. Whether those predictions hold or not, they reveal a conference that believes the ground beneath them is shifting. Meanwhile, on the state-level track, another pressure point appeared this past weekend in Indiana. Several MAGA-aligned Republican state senators publicly condemned what they described as intimidation tactics from the Trump political apparatus. According to their statements, national operatives attempted to influence Indiana's district maps long before the decade-scheduled redistricting was supposed to begin. That alone raises procedural questions. But what makes this situation unusual is the reaction. MAGA Republicans themselves speaking out, breaking ranks, and pointing directly at the Trump team. Two Indiana senators, in particular, went public, and both later experienced swatting attempts. The facts surrounding those incidents are still under investigation, and no direct causal link has been established. But the senators' statements make clear how rattled they were by the timing and by the broader pressure campaign. One of them, Senator Greg Walker of Columbus, put it in unmistakable terms. He said he refused an invitation to the Oval Office and would not support the proposed gerrymander plan. Walker criticized the outreach from a federal employee who contacted him, saying, "That individual works for me. He works for you. He is on my payroll, on your payroll, and campaigning on company time. That is a violation of the Hatch Act." Those are his claims rooted in his understanding of federal employment rules, and they highlight a deeper tension between state autonomy and national political influence. Walker also questioned why a sitting president would involve himself in Indiana map-making at all. Isn't there a long list of national priorities more important than pressuring a state senator about district lines? His remarks reflect both frustration and disbelief, sentiments common among veteran officials who feel institutional boundaries are being blurred. He went further, offering his opinion on the political motive that Donald Trump, in his view, fears losing the midterms and facing impeachment afterward. That is Walker's interpretation, not an established fact. But it shows how even within MAGA-leaning circles, concerns about political overreach are starting to surface. Another Indiana senator, Michael Bozek, responded strongly after Donald Trump used a derogatory term to describe the governor of Minnesota. Bozek condemned the language, noting that such rhetoric erodes public trust and distracts from legitimate policy debate. The term Trump used is vulgar, and I will not repeat it here, but clarity matters. It was directed at Governor Walz, and multiple officials acknowledged hearing it. As these two storylines unfold, Washington's collapsing morale and Indiana's state-level backlash, a larger pattern becomes visible. Institutions under strain, boundaries pushed, allies turning skeptical, and questions emerging about how far political influence should reach, and who is willing to push back when the pressure becomes too great. Back in Indiana, the story deepened further. The same Republican state senator continued his statement with something far more personal. He explained that many constituents had asked for his position on redistricting, and he reminded them that he has long been an advocate for people with intellectual disabilities, ever since the birth of his second daughter, who has Down syndrome. For him, derogatory language is not an abstract debate. It touches his family directly. And when he said, "This is not the first time our president has used insulting and derogatory references," he was pointing to a pattern he believes carries real consequences. His conclusion was firm. He would vote no on the redistricting effort, and he added that perhaps the president could use the next 10 months to persuade voters that his policies and behavior are worthy of a congressional majority. That is his opinion, and it shows how deeply some state-level conservatives feel the strain. Meanwhile, another tremor is approaching in Washington. Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation, scheduled for the first week of January, will trigger a special election in Tennessee's 7th congressional district. On the surface, it is a deep red plus 22 district. But the race between Democratic candidate Afton Bain and Trump-aligned Republican Matt Van Epps has unexpectedly tightened. Bain, who has appeared frequently on the Midas Touch network, is running a pro-democracy campaign that has resonated with voters in a way few anticipated. Polling shows a dead heat, within the margin of error. If she wins, it would mark one of the most significant political upsets in recent memory. Momentum, at least for now, is on her side, though the fundamentals of the district remain steep. Before returning to the broader pattern, a brief note surfaced on the legal front. Commentator Michael Popak, known to many viewers, has launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, after years of viewers urging him to take on cases directly. According to public information, the firm focuses on catastrophic injury matters, including trucking incidents, malpractice, negligence, and wrongful death, offering free consultations. While this is tangential to the political narrative, it underscores the environment surrounding this moment. Shifting roles, new ventures, and institutions reorganizing themselves during a volatile period. And then, the story loops back to Troy Nehls, the Texas congressman whose resignation triggered so much discussion. One remark from Nehls stands out and offers a window into the mindset of a certain faction. In a recorded clip, Nehls stated, "There is no question he is the leader of our party. Whatever his mission, his goals, his objectives, we embrace it. Every single word. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet high and scratch your head, we all jump 3 feet high and scratch our heads." These are his words, not paraphrased, and they illustrate a level of loyalty that has defined this era of the party. When you connect these parallel threads, a state senator in Indiana rejecting pressure, a deep red district unexpectedly tightening, seasoned members of Congress leaving, and longtime loyalists publicly affirming absolute obedience, a larger system-level picture appears. The strain is not coming from one direction. It is coming from multiple layers at once. Washington insiders, state-level conservatives, and everyday voters expressing fatigue, conflict, and uncertainty. The pattern became even clearer when Troy Nehls began posting videos of himself smoking cigars, brushing off concerns as reporters pressed him on healthcare. One journalist asked whether he was worried that Americans might lose coverage. Nehls answered, "I don't give any worry at all that Americans may lose their healthcare, because just some Americans that aren't Americans, and that is the illegals. Why should illegals be on Medicare? They shouldn't have it." Those are his words. He then praised what he called one big, beautiful bill, telling the public they simply needed to accept it and absorb it, because in his view it was the right thing for the American people. But when you look closer, another layer of the story emerges. In a separate remark, Nehls acknowledged the deep dysfunction inside the House Republican Conference. He said, "We're dysfunctional. We are. It's somewhat embarrassing. It may bite us in the butt in November, but my focus is Donald J. Trump, because nobody can manage this conference. The Lord Jesus himself could not manage this conference." These statements reveal frustration from within the very faction that once championed absolute unity. At the same time, Democratic voices began to weigh in on the turmoil. Representative Ro Khanna argued that Trump's coalition had fractured, saying that populist supporters see an opening because, in their view, Trump now behaves more like an establishment figure, like Mitt Romney, as he put it, socializing with billionaires and advancing tax policies that benefit them. Khanna's assessment is an opinion, but it reflects how some across the aisle interpret the shifting political landscape. Representative Ilhan Omar added another layer, connecting the dysfunction to the ongoing fight over the Epstein files. She noted that a small group of Republicans, including Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace, had joined a petition that forced action. Omar pointed out that these members faced heavy backlash, and she questioned whether others would be willing to do the same. But she emphasized that the survivors are not stepping back, and neither is the Oversight Committee. In her words, "The Republican Party is an absolute mess right now." Speaker Mike Johnson embarrassed himself this week and over the last couple of months, flip-flopping on this issue, and then having Donald Trump endorse Republicans signing on to this bill. That is her view, rooted in her assessment of recent events. She concluded with a clear commitment. Oversight Democrats will continue pressing until the Epstein files are released. This is not a partisan threat. It is a stated objective tied to their oversight role. Meanwhile, outside Congress, business leaders are watching the situation through a different lens. Many are already thinking beyond the current presidency, considering what a future Department of Justice, under different leadership, might view as unlawful conduct. They are recalibrating now, aware that decisions made under one administration may face scrutiny under the next. An example came during an interview with Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. A journalist noted the high-profile renovation project in Detroit, supported by companies like Amazon, Coinbase, and Google, and asked why J.P. Morgan had not appeared on the donor list. "Did you think about it?" the reporter asked. The question reflects a broader uncertainty among corporate leaders: where to align, when to speak up, and how to navigate an evolving legal and political environment. Taken together, these parallel threads, Nehls' remarks, Democratic critiques, the Epstein files fight, and the business community's cautious repositioning, form a wider pattern. Federal lawmakers showing strain, state-level tensions rising, and corporate leaders preparing for a future where accountability may look very different. And that leads to the deeper reflection. What does it signal when political fractures, institutional fatigue, and cautious corporate recalibration all unfold at the same time? And how should Americans interpret these crosscurrents as they shape the next chapter of national governance? Seeing these dynamics clearly is essential for understanding how power, responsibility, and public trust are shifting beneath the surface. Jamie Dimon added one final point that rippled through boardrooms nationwide. We have to be very careful how anything is perceived, and also how the next Department of Justice is going to deal with it. There is a concern of buying favors. That statement, measured, deliberate, captures a reality many business leaders are now quietly acknowledging. The political winds are shifting, and corporate conduct made under one administration may be judged very differently by the next. In moments like this, caution is not just strategy, it is survival. And when you place this alongside everything unfolding, from House resignations to state-level backlash, a larger picture comes into focus. A movement once defined by rigidity now shows signs of fragmentation. Senior Republicans anticipating minority status, state senators openly rejecting pressure, corporate leaders hedging against an uncertain legal future. These are not isolated ripples. They are indicators of a system recalibrating under stress. So the question becomes, what does it mean when veteran lawmakers, state officials, and CEOs all begin preparing for a world beyond the current political moment? And what does it reveal about the trajectory of power inside a party struggling to contain its own contradictions? As always, your perspective matters. These developments are not small, and they are not superficial. They are part of a broader realignment that Americans have seen before, moments when institutions strain, alliances shift, and the political landscape prepares to change shape once again. Let me know your thoughts. The conversation is only beginning.